A gangland murder in Belfast of the underworld's most wanted man. Hitman Robbie Lawler had countless enemies, but who ordered his death? This month, Crime World presents Double Cross, the murder of Robbie Lawler, a podcast series that will bring you right into the black heart of organised crime. Based on my new book, Web of Betrayal, we'll follow a bloody trail into the underworld and to the narco-style murder and dismemberment of teenager Cian Mulready Woods, which would set in motion the complex plot to take out Lawler. Listen as we lift the lid on the inner workings of Ireland's gangland, revealing a cast of ruthless characters who take centre stage for their place in this real-life double-cross thriller. Crime World presents Double Cross, coming soon to all podcast platforms. Web of Betrayal by me, Nicola Tallant, is now available on Audible and in all good bookstores. So, Clodagh, the evidence has concluded from the trial, the civil action against Conor McGregor and James Lawrence, which has been taken by Nikita Hand. You've been covering it. We last spoke, you got us to the end of McGregor's witness testimony, and he was in the stand when we left it. But day 7, the other part of day 7, there was another important witness, James Lawrence, who we're going to talk about now, and the fact that this trial essentially is now finished. The jury will be hearing sum up evidence on Tuesday, which will be sort of a culmination of what the Nikita Hand side put to the courts, all those witnesses that you've gone through, and then what McGregor's side put to the courts. James Lawrence clearly isn't making a case at all, or is that his witness? Is he a witness for Conor McGregor, or is he a witness for himself?
So Conor McGregor's legal team, after he stepped down from, well, they actually had one other short witness on the stand yesterday, and that was his, I'll just tell you quickly about this because it was very short. It was his personal photographer, David Fogarty, who has his own photography company. He went on the stand to confirm a set of photographs that he had taken of Conor McGregor in December 2018. And those photographs were just submitted to the jury as part of evidence. So at that point then, Conor McGregor's legal team rested their case. And it's this point then that James Lawrence's legal team began their...
so that's his case, basically. His evidence is his case, as his part of it. Okay.
Yes.
So let's take James Lawrence's case, and the first witness that was called to that was a security guard.
Yes. So the security guard's name was Dennis Desari, and he worked for the company that was employed by Conor McGregor. He was one of the security guards that was there on the day of December 9th. So he began his witness testimony by explaining to the court that on Saturday the 8th of December, he got a phone call asking him to work on the Sunday, which is the following day. So the next day he gets to work at around 2 p.m. in the afternoon, where he met his boss, Kazim, who was the owner of the security company, who was there with Conor McGregor that day. And he was told that Conor was in one of the hotel rooms and he would be working at that hotel for the night. He then said he went into the room where he seen Conor. He said he seen his friend James, and there was 2 girls. He said that he knew Conor and James, but not the 2 girls. He explained that there was 2 rooms booked. So there was the room where the security guards were waiting, and there was also the penthouse, which is where Conor McGregor, Nikita Hand, James Lawrence and Danielle Keeley were for that day. And he explained that his role when he was there, he would check in every 15 to 20 minutes. And he said during his time when he first arrived, when he checked in, he said everyone seemed fine and there was no distress. A senior counsel for James Lawrence then asked if he was asked at any point to go and get anything, to which he said he couldn't remember. He was then asked, did he have a conversation with James at any stage about going to get something? And he said, yes, he asked me, can you go get me something? So there was CCTV footage played to the witness from the hotel, and this was from 1637, and Dennis identified himself. He said, yeah, that was him in the lift. He was going over to the shop across from the hotel, and he said that he went and got condoms for James. He then went back to the hotel with the condoms, and he was asked what had happened. He said that he went and he seen Conor and James in the room with the 2 girls, and the mood was the same as previous. And then he went into the other room with his boss. He went back at other stages where he's seen Conor, James and the 2 girls in the room. He was asked if he's seen them in any other room, and he said most of the time they were all in the same room. James was in the sitting room with a girl, and Conor was in the other room with a girl. girl. He said that the door between the two rooms were open, but if the door wasn't open, he'd always knock to make sure that he's all right, as in Conor McGregor. At this point, he then left and went back to the other room. He wasn't exactly sure on the time around this. He was then asked if he brought who he brought home, and he said he brought Conor home as well as the blonde girl. And he was asked if there was any signs of distress, and he said no. After this, he dropped Conor back to his own house, and then he rang Kazim and asked him what he wanted him to do because he was on shift. So he went back to the hotel. He said he went back to the hotel and James was there with the other girl. He asked if they wanted to be dropped home and they said no. So they went up, he went into his room. And then he went and checked on them again, and he asked them if they wanted anything, and he said they wanted food. So for them, he ordered burgers and chips. He stayed in the room and ate with them. He said there was no signs of distress. And he asked them at that point again did they want to go home? He was asked if he's seen any drugs or alcohol being taken in the time that he was there, and he said no, which the judge interjected and asked, during the whole time you see no alcohol or drugs being taken? And he clarified he would just walk into the room and check that everyone was okay and then leave. So that was the end of James Lawrence's legal team examining him on the stand. Of course, Nikita Hand's legal team then had their opportunity. So it was put to him that he was saying that nobody seemed to be under the influence, not even the girl who remained with James, and he said no. He said that he was working with the company GZB along with other men who worked there as well. He was from Albania, Dennis is, and other men who worked there were also from Albania. He began working there, he said it was from about 2017 till 2019 or 2020. He wasn't sure, he said, how many people worked for the firm. He didn't know if it was 5, if it was 25. And as far as he knew, he said that the company had the contract for the security for Conor McGregor. He said it wasn't the first time he had met Conor McGregor. And when asked if he had done this type of work with Mr. McGregor previously, he said yes. He was asked then if it wouldn't always be the Beacon, if it would be other hotels. And he said, yes, it would be. He was asked if it would be a common thing for him to order rooms and go back with people he didn't know, to which Dennis said no. He was asked if he was familiar with James Lawrence, to which he agreed. And then he asked if he would be frequently with Conor McGregor, if James Lawrence would be frequently with him. And he said no, not really on nights out, but he had met him elsewhere. So then it was put to him that when he got to the hotel around 2:30, his boss Kazim told him that there was a party going on. He said that there was Mr. McGregor, James, 2 girls. He said one of the girls had blonde hair and one of the girls had dark hair. Now we could see in the CCTV footage previously, Nikita Hand had this dark hair, and her friend Danielle Keeley had blonde hair. So he said it was put to him that he went into the room and seen the girls. He said yes. He said where were they? He said they were in the sitting room. He then was put to him that he would stay in the other room and go and check every 15-20 minutes. And he said, yes, he would just check in to see if everyone was all right or if anything was needed. At this point, it was put to him that at one stage he opened the door of the security room and he was asked to get condoms, to which he said he said yes. He asked if it was a 3-pack and he said, I don't know. He then said that he gave them to James. And at this point, he could see that all 4 of them were... He couldn't remember where he gave them to James, but he could see that all 4 of them were still in the sitting room. He said that they were all getting on fine. They were all dressed. And he was asked if anyone was undressed, and he said no. Then it was put to him that he went into the security room and went back a half an hour later to check on them. So he said that Conor was in the bedroom with the blonde girl and James was in the sitting room with the dark-haired girl.
Clodagh, you have said to us that in evidence that you could see on the CCTV camera that the blonde girl was Danielle and that the dark-haired girl was Nikita.
Yes.
Okay.
Then he said that James was talking to the blonde girl, and then he asked, could you see into the bedroom? He was asked, could you see into the bedroom? And he said yes. It was then put to him that everyone was dressed, to which he agreed. It was then put to him that he came back around 6 p.m. and in his statement he said that the 2 girls were dancing beside the sofa, and he said he couldn't recall, but if it was in the statement, then yes, he agreed with that. And then he came back in another time in which Conor was ready to go. Before Conor went, before they left, Dennis went into the other room, back into the security room, to his boss Kazim, who he said was asleep next door, and they all left. So the 2 security men, Dennis and Kazim, James, Conor, Nikita and Danielle all left. So he said that he went with Conor and the blonde girl and they dropped Conor back home. He had Conor's bank card as well if he needed to pay anything. And he was asked if he was aware that James and the other girl were staying at the hotel at this point, and he said yes, but he went back to the hotel on Gazim's instructions at this point. It was then put to him that when he got back there, the dark-haired girl and James were talking face to face, and he said as far as he remembers, yes, and Gazim was in the security room. He then said he ordered food for the three of them. James invited him to stay and eat with them, and he did, and about 15 minutes after that, he went back to the security room. He was then put to him that he had told James that he had to go to work. So he worked at a GAA club in Stillorgan. And he said that he got to his job in Stillorgan. There was a couple of other security guards already there. So he called Gazim and he returned back to the hotel. It was put to him that they went back to the room and they called room service to take the glasses out of the room, and he said he doesn't remember. It was then put to him, why would you be concerned about cleaning the room? Why would you do that? Would you always do this after a McGregor party? To which he said no. And when he was asked why did they do it this time, he said he couldn't remember. He then went to the reception and paid with Conor's bank card to pay for the room. And when he came back from dropping Conor and the blonde girl, he was asked if the dark girl was fully clothed, to which he said yes. And at this point, he is no longer a witness on the stand, and James Lawrence is next.
Is called, okay. So James Lawrence is the second guy obviously named in these civil proceedings. Both him and McGregor, by the way, have said, as we have had to repeat throughout this, have said that they had consensual sex with Nikita Hand, that they didn't rape, they're denying rape, and she's seeking damages.
Yes. So when he got on the stand yesterday, he began sort of the beginning of the story when he kind of became familiar with Conor McGregor and how they became friends. So he said that he knew him since they were children, really, kind of acquaintances. And as they got older, their relations got better as friends. He was asked if that would mean they would go out together a lot. And he said he wouldn't go out with him all the time. And he also added that he wouldn't be my first choice of person to go out with. He explained that they went to District 8 where they stayed for an hour or so. He explained that District 8 was a club in town. He doesn't really go out in town, he said, but he went out with Conor and his friends from his gym. But it wasn't that good, so they headed off to Crystal nightclub where they remained till about 6:30 a.m. He was asked if he had much to drink, and he said he had vodka and a few Lucozades, to which the judge interjected and asked him, you mix vodka with Lucozade, to which he agreed. It was then asked if he took cocaine, and he said, I didn't take cocaine. I've never taken cocaine in my life. He said he went home around 6 or 7 a.m. in the morning to his mother's house. So sorry, just go back on that as well with the cocaine. Conor McGregor in his testimony had said that there was a little bit of cocaine brought out in Crystal nightclub, to which James Lawrence is obviously saying at this point here that he didn't take cocaine and he's never taken cocaine in his life. He explained that he went home at around 6 or 7 a.m. to his mother's house. He said when he got there, he had to ask his mother to get cash from the house to give him to pay for the taxi, so she came out with €20. He went in, he said he had a laugh with his mum, had a chat, had a drink of water, and then head to bed where his girlfriend was. He said he was woken up around 10:30, 11 a.m. by Conor. He said that Conor came in and asked him if he could use the toilet, and he also wanted to see if he wanted to go out with him. James told him no, his plan was to stay in the house and chill out for the day. So he walked him downstairs and went back inside and looked out the window, the bedroom window, to see if Conor McGregor had left yet. And he said that he noticed that there was a phone on the ground outside. He said it was outside. He was either on the path or on the windowsill. He said he went, or on the wall. He said he went downstairs, grabbed the phone because he wanted to give it back to him. So he rang his driver and told him to come back and get it. So he went downstairs to give him the phone. There was no shoes or socks on when he went out. As we've heard numerous times during this trial, James Lawrence had no shoes on at all during the events of this day. So he went downstairs, went out, and he's seen that there was girls in the back of the car and they were having fun. He decided he'd jump into the car and go with them. He said that wherever Nikita was sitting in the back of the car, he couldn't remember where she was sat, but he was sat in the front seat, and he said that she was able to lean over in the car and was kind of pushing him, pulling his jumper. And he said that everyone was having a laugh. It was all good. He said it was put to him that there was cocaine taken from his home and brought in the car, and he said there was no cocaine taken from my house. I didn't take cocaine. It was then put to him that they were driving around for half an hour or so. There was kind of a talk of going to the hotel, and he said yes, at this point they had all decided to go to the hotel. He then said that he had no shoes on. There was no plans to go out clubbing or anything like that, so they went off to the hotel. He was asked then if he could see out of the car clearly, and he said he could, to which he said, you know, he was then asked if you could see at the car clearly, did you know where you were going? And he said, we were driving around looking for something to do, and then we decided to go to the hotel. He said everyone was laughing and joking. There was drinks brought by the security guard maybe. He said that they had vodka, Bacardi and some mixers. He was asked then if everyone was drinking. He said that he wasn't much of a drinker. So he had one drink but was kind of sitting on it. He said it all started off in the sitting room. Everyone was having a laugh. Conor and Nikita were being flirtatious in the car. And then in the back of the car, they were coming onto each other. He then said Conor went into the room with Nikita. Conor went into the room. Nikita followed him. He said Conor and Nikita were flushed to the door with their hands on each other. And he said, one thing I can stand by that was that door was open the whole night. He said that himself and Danielle were chilling on the sofa. They heard sex noises, moaning, and Danielle turned to him and said she's going to regret that. She's just bought a house with her boyfriend, to which he replied, they're old enough and bold enough. I remember the question he was asked at this point was everyone drinking? He then continued on and said that nothing was going on at the time between himself and Danielle. He said that she said that won't be happening between us. He said that they were sat there talking. Nikita was going in and out of the room getting drinks, and she was in good spirits. There was nothing wrong with her. Asked if she was fully clothed. He said he doesn't recall exactly what she was wearing. It may have been the jumpsuit, but she was clothed. She was wearing clothes. She was in the room 4 or 5 times, and everything was okay with himself and Danielle. He said then it got to a point where himself and Danielle started kissing and got affectionate. She told me if we get condoms, we could have sex. And he said, okay. So he went and asked Dan if he had any in the security room, and he said he hadn't. So he went out and got some. He then said he went back to the sofa. At this point, he got back into the bed. So this was the sofa bed that they were on in this sitting room, and they had sex on the sofa bed. Nikita came in, he said, 2 or 3 different times. At one point, she came into the room while he was at her neck or her breasts kissing her. And Nikita made the comment, you dirty bastard. Danielle then asked her to leave, and they put a blanket over themselves. He said they had sex again, and after this, he went to the bathroom to remove the condom. He said at this point you could see Nikita was on top of Conor, and they were having sex for a second time. She had nothing on at this time, and she was completely naked on top of Conor. He was then asked how many times he had sex with Miss Keeley, and he said 3 because he used all 3 condoms. He then said Nikita came out and asked him to help wake up Conor. So he got up in front of Danielle and he went in. He said they got a leg each. He was lying on his belly, and he said, just leave me be. He was done. So he left. And he said he was there for about half an hour when Conor got up and said that he was ready to go. When he was told he was going to leave, this was around 5 or half 5, he said. There was a discussion about leaving between them. Nikita wanted to stay on. He said everyone was in the same mood that they had been previous in the day when they first arrived. Everyone was smiling, laughing. Nikita wanted to stay on and have more drinks, he said. But he was done, Conor was done, and Danielle was done. So they all left together. Conor then took Danielle in his car to go home, and James was going to go with Nikita. He said Nikita seen them off, so she seen Danielle off in the car. We heard in Danielle's evidence that Nikita went up and gave her a hug before they left. So they went off in that car and then went back to James. He said that they left the downstairs car park. They were waiting for their driver. So they were waiting for somebody to come and drive them. There was a driver had gone to the reception to pay, but they were waiting for him to come so that they could, who we know was Dennis. They were waiting for him so that they could go back up, so that because they had no key card to get back up. So they could go for the reception to the car park, but they couldn't go beyond that. So it was put to him then, as you can see, he said, as you can see from the video of them going up and down the lift. So this is them going up and down the lift for a long period of time, which has been referred to by the legal counsel before as they were sort of dilly-dallying going up and down. And he said that, as you could see from the video, she was smacking me on the bum. She was trying to kiss me. he said that he had been with her friend. So this is in relation to Nikita during that time. The CCTV at this point wasn't replayed. He was just referencing when the CCTV had been played to the court previously. He said, I was with her friend 3 times. I had no purpose to be with Nikita. I had no drive. He said that about 14 or 15 times she tried to come on to him and he turned her down. He said that she was following me around the lift. Reception wouldn't give them a key to get up to the room because they didn't know what name was on the room. So they got a key card for the floor. So they got a key card for the 3rd floor. They then went and they knocked on the door of the security guard and he let them in to the penthouse room where they were. So they gathered a few things and they left. So at this point Nikita got her jacket, she got her shoes and they got a drink each. He said the driver gave him a full bottle of something. He wasn't sure. It was just left over in the room. It was a bottle of alcohol. He wasn't sure what it was or what happened to it in the end. He said when they left the room, it was the same thing in the lift. She was trying to kiss him in the car park. They went down to the lift and it was the same thing from the room, kissing me and asking him to go to the Marble Arch pub. He said when they got to the car park, they were kissing and she was asking him to do something like that. He said, if you look at the videos, you can see me getting annoyed with her. He said, she texted, I saw her in front of me. He said that she had no problem at this point lying to him and telling him this and that and the other. She knew what she was at. So from previous evidence, we heard that Nikita Hand texted her boyfriend Steve in the basement at around 18:28 and she told him that she was in the goat, she was fine and she was having a good time. So then after this, they got into the car and their driver was going to take them away from the hotel. He was in the front of the car. She was in the back. He said that she was trying to kiss him and asking him, what he was doing, in relation to where they were going to go next. He said they just wanted to go home. At some point, he ended up from the front seat in the back seat of the car. And he said that the driver was looking in the rear view mirror, asking him what we were doing, where they were going. At this time, he said, Nikita put her hand on my leg and she was asking me what I was doing. He said, I felt belittled because she was doing that in front of another man. So at this point, they decided to go back to the hotel. He said that she was
And Clodagh, this piece of evidence is the only evidence we've heard in relation to that 20 minutes about where the CCTV footage we've heard during the week that they sort of go out of CCTV footage and they come back in, but nobody else in this trial has given evidence about what happened or was said or allegedly said in this car. So this is the first time, and this is James Lawrence that's giving this evidence.
Yes, so we had heard previously there was like this window of time that wasn't really accounted for, and then it became apparent that they had left in a car at some point. We didn't really hear more about that at all until today. And yes, James Lawrence is giving his account of what happened in the car. So the driver, the intent of was obviously to bring them home. So we kept kind of asking them, what are you doing? What are you doing? To see where they wanted to go. So they then decided at this point as well to go back to the hotel. He said that at this point, they were in the back of the car, they were kissing and they were flirting all the way to the room. He said when they got into the lift, the driver, he asked the driver if he had any condoms and he said yes. And he got 2 condoms from him. He said that they were kissing from the lift through the corridor into the bedroom. They had sex in the sofa bed once. At this point, he asked if there was any marks on Nikita and he said no. He then said that he described the sex in detail, the various positions that they started in, Nikita asking him to change position. Then he said we were chilled out for a little bit of time afterwards. They were talking, they were having a laugh. She was asking him if he had a girlfriend and then she was talking a little bit about her family. He said then the driver had gone back in at this point and they asked if they could stay for a little while longer. So they then went into the room where Conor and Nikita had sex and they had sex again. Then they had burgers. They were on the sofa and Nikita had asked James to ask the driver to leave, which he said they had sex for a second time at this point. Then there was, he said, I thought there was sauce on the bed from the burgers and she had said it was nothing to do with her. He said after the sex then she got upset. She started to tear up and he said it started to annoy him. He told her it was just a small bruise and it was nothing. So he said that at this point she was getting upset after sex because she had a small bruise and she was querying how she was going to explain this bruise to her boyfriend. He said that her tearing up started to annoy him because it was something small. It was nothing. She could explain it away. he said then he comes from a family of women. He says he has 6 sisters, dozens of nieces, and she was upset for about a minute. She said, "Don't worry about me. I just get like this when I drink." He said that there was the same demeanour that had kind of then returned to the same mood, the same vibe that had been going on earlier in the day. Then they told the driver they were ready to go. The driver told him that he only had a van and could only bring James home. So James then said that he wouldn't leave Nikita on her own to get home, so he would get a taxi with her. He said on the way in the lift down, on the way down, she was kissing me, telling me she liked me and what a nice person I was. By her own recollection, by now, James then said on the stand, by her own recollection by now, she had said in her statement that Conor had raped her. As we were going out the door at this point as well, she had said, "We look like a couple."
And I think maybe if we can remind ourselves what it is about this point in the day that Nikita Hand has said, because she, on the witness stand, said that she had no memory of this and she does not believe she had sex with James Lawrence at all.
Yes. So she says that the only thing she remembers from that evening is her account is she woke up, she checked her phone, she seen the time, she panicked. Everyone started to leave. She left. She doesn't recall any of the video footage from the elevator, doesn't recall leaving the Beacon Hotel. Her next memory is when she is back up in the hotel room with James. And all of a sudden, she said it came over her. She started to remember what was going on. She started to remember that she had been allegedly raped by Conor McGregor. And then she broke down. She told James what had happened to her. And it's at this point, he says, that she said that he had been like comforting her. He ordered her food. He told her he was going to get her a drink. She says she remembers the food being there, but not really eating it. And she had, even in her own testimony, she said, "I have no problem with James."
Mm-hmm. Now, she said that she categorically does not believe that she had sex with him at all. And it only came to light that James Lawrence claims that he had sex with her after Conor McGregor was arrested on the 17th of January, when he voluntarily made his way to a police station and gave a statement stating that he had sex with her a number of times in the aftermath of that, sort of earlier in the day.
Yes. So at this point, I suppose he's saying that he's interjecting. So he's telling the story. He was in the lift on the way down, telling me she liked me, I was a nice person. And then he says, by her own recollection at this point, she had said in her statement that Conor had raped her. And then he went on to explain that as they were leaving the front door, they could see their reflection in the glass. And she said, "We look like a couple." He said, "I had a girlfriend, so I pulled my arm away from her." In the taxi, she said she really liked me. He was then dropped off at a friend's house in Crumlin because he didn't want to go home where his partner was. He gave her €50 for the taxi. And then he woke up the next morning and there was articles that there was a sports star and there was a rape allegation. And he said it was on every webpage. He said it didn't think at first that it was Conor McGregor, but after he read on that it was 2 girls in a hotel room, he said it came home to me that it was Conor. He then said on his solicitor's advice that he made a voluntary statement. Then his lawyer...
Was there a date for the statement?
The statement he gave was on the 18th of January at 2:14.
And that was the day after Conor McGregor was arrested. He was arrested on the 17th of January. And
yes.
This incident happened on the 9th of December.
Yes. So before he's finished with his own legal counsel on the stand, Nikita Hand's legal team do a cross-examination. But it's put to him, his legal team ask, "Do you know what a patsy is?" And he says no. And he said, his legal counsel say, "A patsy is a fall guy. Are you a fall guy for Mr. McGregor?" And he said, "No. What man would put himself up for the rape of a woman?" And then he is finished and it's time for cross-examination from Nikita Hand's legal team. We hear a lot more about those statements. So cross-examination from Nikita Hand's legal counsel actually begins with those Garda statements that we were talking about. So he first went to the Gardaí in the late morning of the 18th of January 2019 and he gave an interview at 2:14 p.m. At that stage, he hadn't been charged with anything and he was never charged with anything. And he said that he went there not to help, but to explain as best he could how it was. And it was put to him as well that before he went and gave his statement to Gardaí, that Mr. McGregor's interviews with Gardaí had been completed. And he said yes. And just in particular in relation to James Lawrence, in Conor McGregor's Garda statements, he gave a statement and Conor McGregor did. And as part of this statement, he posed the question, are you sure she didn't have sex with somebody else? And then it was an hour later, he said, he gave another statement to which he said, I think she had sex with James Lawrence. So then it's clarified by Nikita Hand's legal team that he didn't give his first statement to Gardaí until after Conor McGregor had made his statements to Gardaí. So this is the following day. So it was put to him that he went to the same solicitor as Conor McGregor on the 12th of December, and he agreed. So this was a couple of days after the alleged incident. It was then put to him that he didn't furnish his statement to the Gardaí until January, to which he agreed to that. It was then put to him that it was only after he intervened and said that he had sex with Nikita that he became a suspect, to which he also agreed. After he went to Gardaí, Nikita then made a complaint about his conduct. It was put to him that had you not given your statement to Gardaí, she wouldn't have made a complaint against you. And he said she never had a reason to complain. It was then put to him that he put himself in the direct firing line, and he said it's the truth. Then he said in his Garda statement, I would like to say again that the sex between me and Nikita was fully consensual. It was soft sex, which we both enjoyed. I am not responsible for the marks you have shown me today. I'm shocked by the marks in the photos. And this was in a statement that he had given to Gardaí. It was then asked about photographs. So these are the photographs of Nikita Hand's body, the bruising. These pictures were taken on the morning of the 11th of December by Gardaí. Of course, there were photographs taken on the evening of the 10th of December by Emer Brennan, who subsequently deleted all those photographs. Then she went to the Satu clinic in the Rotunda, didn't want to get photographs of her body taken that day, but agreed to go in on the 11th to have them taken the next morning. So he was then presented with these photographs of at his Garda interview, and he had made these comments that he was shocked by the marks. He was then asked if he had a booklet of the photographs. Of course, throughout this case, there's various pieces of evidence that the jury have copies of, that the witnesses on the stand have copies of. There are books of photographs. There's books of photographs of the hotel room. And in particular as well, there's this book of photographs of Nikita Hand's injuries. So when asked if he had the booklet so that they could go through it, he said, I don't need to see them again. He said, when I had sex with her, she had no bruises, and then made the comment she was out for 3 days. It was then put to him that he had sex with her on the evening of the 9th of December, to which he agreed. Nikita Hand's, Mr. Gordon for Nikita Hand's legal counsel said, so we're talking about a 24-hour period. He said, where did this 3 days come from? And he said, I don't know. I didn't cause any bruises. Mr. Gordon then said, you had consensual sex. You took your clothes off. If you did all that, you would have seen those bruises. And he said, if that's what you suggest, but I'm telling you what I saw. He said, I don't know where she got the bruising from. She didn't get it from me. I didn't see any bruises on her either. He then, Mr. Gordon for Nikita Hand's legal counsel, said, you told the court you don't take cocaine and had little to drink. You seem to be in your most right mind at that point. And he said, yes, everyone was in their right mind. He then said, I'm suggesting to you that it wouldn't have been perfect, wouldn't be in his perfect mind, to which James replied, the door was open. I didn't hear anything. We didn't have earmuffs on. We didn't hear anything but sex, moaning and enjoyment. It was then put to him that the only place Nikita Hand could have got those bruises was from his friend, Mr. McGregor, to which he replied, I don't know where she got those bruises from. Mr. Gordon then said, would you agree they're all the hallmarks of a violent assault? To which James said, I'm not an expert. How do you know she got a bad beating? To which Mr. Gordon said, I've seen the photographs. James then replied, he's no bruises expert. How does he know where the bruises are from? And I don't know either. Then he was asked about his statement in which he said he'd never taken cocaine, and he said yes. It was then put to him that Danielle Keeley said that everyone had cocaine, to which James replied, Nikita said it was her and Danielle. Conor said it was him, Nikita and Danielle. Drugs have had a bad effect on my family and I stay well away from. There was no cocaine in my house and there never has been. it was then put to him that Nikita said that Mr. McGregor came out of his home with a bag of cocaine, and he said that's a lie. She's told multiple lies, and this is another lie. Mr. McGregor already confirmed that he didn't take any cocaine at my house. There was no cocaine in my house. Then he agreed that the line of questioning moved on to the security guard, Dennis, arriving at the hotel. Mr. Lawrence agreed that he arrived at about 2:30. For the first hour or so, it was put to him the security men were in the room because their room wasn't ready yet. And he said, I can't comment on that. I'm not sure. It was then put to him that Danielle Keeley described them as in the room when they arrived upstairs. So Conor had also said that when they got up to the room, they were the security guards. They had a little look around. Danielle Keeley also described them as being in the room when they got there. James then said that they wouldn't really sit around drinking with them or anything like that. Mr. Gordon then said that he wants to establish that there was a delay in making the room available for the security guards. And he said, I can't answer that. Then at around 4:30 p.m, it was put to him that he asked Dennis to go and buy condoms. And then those condoms were given to James, to which he agreed. When Dennis came back with the condoms, he said it was himself and Danielle on the sofa, and Conor and Nikita were not in the room. He said between getting the condoms at around 5 and Conor wanting to leave, it was put to him that it was approximately an hour of time between the arrival of the condoms and the breaking up of the party. It was then put to him by Mr. Gordon, you're telling the jury you had sex 3 times with Danielle in that time. And he said, yes, that is a fact. Mr. Gordon said, you will recall that she said that she had sex with you once. James then replied, she also said she never had sex with me. So this is in relation to Danielle Keeley. Mr. Gordon said, you had sex 3 times within an hour. And James said, yes. Mr. Gordon then said, let's go back to Dennis's evidence. He said that in his evidence, he said that he checked into the room from time to time. And on no occasion when he checked in, did he see you have sex with Danielle. James then replied, if I was having sex with Danielle, usually what he would do is knock on the door and wait for an answer. So the judge then interjected and asked, so are you saying, did he knock when you and Danielle were having sex, and did he ask to go in? And he said, no, he didn't. It was then put to him that when the security guard did call into the room, that he was dressed. And he said, I'm not going to walk around in the nip. He said he couldn't remember if he had his bottoms down, but he wasn't sure. It was then put to him that between each sexual encounter, I suppose, that they had, that there was some interval in between those encounters. And he said yes, but he wasn't sure of how long those intervals were. He was then asked if he had ejaculated, and he said yes. He was then asked if he got redressed after each encounter, because Dennis said anytime he went into the room, they were dressed. And he said, well, like I said, I don't go around in the nip. It was then put to him that as the evening went on, Nikita thought that he was a nice person. And he said, yes, I thought she was a nice person too. It was then put to him that she trusted him. And he said, yeah, I trusted her as well. Then Mr. Gordon put to him, isn't that the reason she was so? To which James interjected and said, she was so nothing. She was slapping me arse, biting me ear. I rejected her. I counted 14 times. I rejected her. I rejected her. I rejected her in front of other people. She peer pressured me to go back to the hotel. You might not believe me because I'm a man. I thought she was a good person, but that turned out to be a lie. Then he said she had so many small bruises. She broke down wondering what to tell her boyfriend, to which Mr. Gordon asked, she broke down? And he said, no, she had that minute. So earlier on in his testimony, he had told his legal counsel, like we just heard, that there was a period of time of a minute where Nikita Hand had teared up and got upset because she had a bruise on her body and didn't know what to tell her boyfriend, but quickly came around and said, don't mind me, that's just what I'm like when I drink. Then he said, he went on to say, we had sex, we had food, we had sex, and then she got upset. The judge then asked, am I right in your evidence that there was sex before food, after food, and then she teared up? And he said, yes. He was asked then if he had ever been on a night out like this with Mr. McGregor before. He said, never been out with girls before with Mr. McGregor, never been in a hotel suite with him or anything like that. And he was asked if he knew where he was going that day. And he said, well, when he came out the second time and he seen the girls in the car, he said, I'd go for a drive. We all agreed as adults, free in our minds, that we would all go back to the hotel. And he said, so you had no idea where you were going? And he said, no, I had no shoes on. It was then put to him that the reason he had no shoes on was because he knew he was going to a hotel. And he said, no, I went out to give back a phone. Then it was put to him that the purpose of all of this was for Mr. McGregor to have sex. And he said, I can't tell you what he was thinking. I've never been in a hotel room before Mr. McGregor with a load of girls having sex. We then turned to his Garda interview from January 2019. And he said in this that he had given the taxi driver a €20 note, that he had his mother get that from the house and give it to him. Then he went home and he got into bed and with his girlfriend for about 2.5 hours, and he was asleep during that time. It was put to him that he went with Mr. McGregor out to have sex with 2 girls. He said, I went out to give Conor his phone back. I saw everyone in the car having a laugh and jumped in. Then he said, I would let no man do anything to any woman. He said, I have a family of 6 sisters, 8 aunties. If I thought he slapped her once, I wouldn't be here. Then he was asked what his attitude to having sex with girls who are drunk was. And he said, we all had a drink on us. Nikita can say she doesn't remember this, she doesn't remember that, but she was well able to text her boyfriend a big paragraph lie. And Mr. Gordon said, I want to get back to the question. And he said, I'm well aware of when a girl's drunk and when a girl is not. And he was asked then, can I take it from you, if you find a girl who's drunk, you wouldn't have sex? And he said, plenty of people have sex when drunk. It was then put to him that there was an issue about whether they even had sex at all. And he said, then why am I here at all? In her head, she doesn't believe she had sex with me. The judge then interjected and said, let him answer the questions. He was then asked if he had noticed a tampon. And he said he didn't know that she had a tampon in, didn't know she was on her period. He said, if I'd known, I wouldn't have had sex with her. He was then asked if he recalled a conversation about the sheets. And he said, yes. He said, I wasn't blood on the sheets. I thought it was red sauce from a burger. And she looked and said, that's not me. He was then asked when he took the condom off, did he notice any blood on them? And he said no. The judge then put it to him that his counsel put to Miss Hand that they were kissing and cuddling in the motor car. And he said yes, that they were kissing on the lift. And he was then asked if they were canoodling in the car, was there an expectation of sex? And James says, I wasn't expecting sex. If it happened, it happened. And that draws us to a close on the evidence. Today, there was one final witness, Professor Basil John Farnan, who was a part-time GP and forensic physician, and he was on the stand for a brief few minutes. He just explained to the jury that he was asked to define what bruising is, and he of course was called by James Lawrence's legal team, and he defined bruising as a discoloration of the skin caused by blunt trauma, which causes little blood vessels under the skin to be damaged. And he said the blood can then leak and percolate towards the skin. He said if bruising is deep in the tissue, it can take maybe 24 to 48 hours to appear. And the jury were then asked to leave on a legal issue. When they came back, Professor Farnan stated again about the bruising being a release of blood under the skin. He said it can sometimes have a bit of a delay in the appearance, and it can appear sometimes in different positions. It can change size and shape. So it might not be in the exact same position as the trauma had been caused. He says bruises, again, as we know, can change in the size, shape, position and colour. He also said that the drug sertraline can also give somebody a propensity for bruising. He then told the court as well that he had treated women in the past who had tampons in, and they were flabbergasted when they said that they had sex, but they were unaware that they had the tampon in during sex. But he did say a retained tampon would cause discomfort due to an infection. Under cross-examination by Nikita Hand's legal team, he said that bruising can appear within a number of hours, and with some tissues it can appear a bit faster. He was then told that there had been evidence that the incident happened sometime between 12:30 and 6 p.m. On December 9th, and that a friend of the court had said that she had taken photographs of the bruising at around 11 p.m. and he was asked if it was possible that the bruises would show by then. He said that the fact is some bruises can appear quickly and some can take 24 to 48 hours. He also said that bruising can appear as time goes on, and he said it's also as a matter of good practice to do forensics, a further examination 24 hours later. At that point then, the jury were dismissed for the day. They were told that the legal teams and the judge have some matters of law to discuss. So this is Judge Jones, who is presiding over the court. He said to the judge, the jury are not due back in now until Tuesday. At that point, they'll be given an issue paper answering the questions on such issue paper, and he advised them that'll be their role now, as they will be.
So they'll be given a series of questions to answer. which will relate to all the evidence they heard, because this isn't a criminal trial. So if the outcome of this is that the jury believe Nikita Hand's side of events, there's no guilty verdict as such. They will just rule what they believe in, and then there would be, should they believe Nikita Hand's version of events, they may be asked to come up with a compensation, financial compensation for her. This is where it gets a bit that I'm not that familiar with civil cases, to be honest with you, because many civil cases we simply don't cover, Look, clearly because of Conor McGregor's involvement with this, and he's such a huge star, there's been a huge amount of journalistic interest in it. But the outcome of a civil case ultimately is a financial reward for if somebody is deemed a victim. So the jury have to come up with that, and no doubt the judge will give them some sort of instructions or a roadmap to that, should they form the opinion that compensation is due. But before they get to that point, they will be instructed on both sides, which will be a summing up of all the evidence that we've heard here, that you've relayed to us. They will go back over everything to keep it fresh in their mind when they go out to consider their essentially their verdict, when they come back in. Conor McGregor presumably has been in court again today. He's been there every day with his father, as has James Lawrence and Nikita Hand. It will likely something finalise with this next week at some point.
Next week, it
depending on how long the summing up comes, the judge's instructions to them. There'll likely be, jury will be going out either Tuesday or Wednesday, and then it's a waiting game for them to come back.
Yes.
With whatever it is they come back with. So look, thank you again for the detailed description of what went on. And that was only the second half of the day.
That was only the second half of the day, yes. There's been a lot of information, a lot of interest, a lot of it. And sometimes I think, is this just interested to us because we are so interested in this, but there's so many people have
a lot of interest in it. And I think as well, because as a jury, we're not free to discuss anything here. We're just following the court case, and you've been doing so chronologically and from your notes that you've been taking in court. So, when we... it is probably the fairest way of reporting it, in that we've reported everything.
Absolutely, yeah.
Absolutely everything from both the sides. And perhaps after it we'll be able to have a freer discussion. But for the moment, we have just kept within the boundaries of how we can report on this. So thank you very much, Clodagh Meaney.
Thank you.
I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.